We're here in the Zona del Silencio. This is Agent Ryan.
Andrea Mora, Agent Drea Mora. I'm still getting used to the agent title.
How did I get used to it before you? Here we are. Once again, we have been summoned back to beautiful Mexico and the ZDS compound. How are you doing today, Drea?
I'm doing pretty good, starting to get used to this, I think. How about you?
I think it's always exciting to be out here. And as I'm looking around, it looks as if the Zona has now shifted further from that flat mountain we did last time. It looks like, I think we're just some kind of overgrown airstrip. It's like something was here at some point. This doesn't look like just the wilds of usual.
Yeah, I can't tell. I have a really bad sense of, I guess, distance, telling how far away we are from certain things, but I appreciate the change in scenery. It's nice.
Yeah, it is different. There's like structures in the distance this time. It looks like we're actually a part of somewhere. But we have been given another fascinating case to discuss here. But before we get to that, I have some notes about the previous case.
Oh, yeah, notes again. Okay.
We have some notes. I don't think this was just for orientation. This might be a regular thing. We have some notes from Issa, the media guy. Just a couple of things concerning the Skinny Bob alien. Here we go. Number one, for Agent Mora. You are correct to point out that the aerial school children saying Skinny Bob looked like the aliens they described is totally ridiculous.
Okay, I'm not crazy. That's good.
Yes, that's just a compliment, more of a note that he agrees that you did kind of take that stance that what those guys were talking about hippies and aliens with dreadlocks and stuff, and why would that have anything to do with Skinny Bob?
Yeah, it doesn't sound at all the same.
All right, well, Issa's giving you props, so let's see. We have another note here for Agent Mora. For your bravery and combat prowess displayed in the Zona during the latest three-headed sheep incursion, you have been given this sharpshooter pin medal. You will be upgraded to level 2 weapon access, and you shall receive this $20 gift certificate to Zona del Churros, located in the Building 2 cafeteria complex. Congratulations, Agent Mora.
I've been wanting to try that place out. I just never have any cash on me, so this is great. $20. That's a lot of churros.
That is. I haven't gone in there yet. Yeah, but I mean, hey, good work. I mean, I feel like I might have been able to match you if I had anything besides that.
All right, first round of churros is on me. I'll get you some churros.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course. I don't know, like you got lambasted last time kind of for just being a little trigger happy there. And you got your blaster taken from you. I kind of feel bad. So, yeah, I'll get you a churro.
It's excited, but look at you. Level 2 weapon access. I'm very excited to see
what that
I know
entails.
You probably already knew about that because I see you've got something very intimidating on your hip.
Well, that's just my own. I didn't know if I wasn't allowed to bring my own, stuff. It's not, this one wasn't issued to me. This is just one I have on hand.
Oh, well, that's exciting. But we got a couple more notes, and these are from me. This is for Agent Ryan. One, Agent Ryan, reminder that you were still required to complete 2 more hours of the mandatory safety seminar, the Zona del Safetio. Until that time, all range blaster access is denied. I know. I got 2 more hours to do. It's 8 hours of training seminars. I mean, as much as I love safety and these seminars.
Yeah, you do. That's surprising to me that you wouldn't have done extra safety hours and training.
It's long. So there's other stuff to do here.
They're not even going to let you go on the blaster range at all until you finish the seminars. So man, you better get on it because you need to get on the range.
Well, it doesn't get better because my other note says for Agent Ryan, the use of your whip in the 3-headed sheep incident was unnecessary and excessive. For this violation, whip access will be temporarily suspended. And it just ends there. Okay.
What do they give you instead of, they give you your wooden gun yet? You don't even have a prop weapon?
I'm wearing a belt. There's not much difference between a belt and a whip as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I hope we don't run into any more of those sheep for the sheep's sake, because I don't think they're going to take your belt from you.
No, I think they've learned their lesson at this point. We have another one here. I think this is for me. For Agent Ryan, Richard Doty has been sighted in the Zona, but we had not made the connection between him and the deformed humanoids that inhabit this area. He will be apprehended and questioned on this matter soon.
Wow, see, good work there.
I got one nice one. All right.
You got some props.
Good. I want to see Doty brought in for question about these deformed humanoids. And we have one more here, and this is addressed to the both of us. It says, for Agents Ryan and Mora, Jamie has observed several deformed humanoids traveling near the South Ridge. Proceed with caution. Do not And do not engage with combat with the DHs. Oh, there's an abbreviation.
The deformed humanoids is DHs.
DHs, okay. This would be a violation of Treaty 2303.
I can see that. Yeah, you gotta, I guess, I don't know. You got to give the benefit of the doubt, or at least just stay hid. I don't like confrontation. I don't like having to draw my weapon, so I'm fine with following that order.
I don't know. I hope we run into these guys because I've got some questions for them. Questions about their involvement in the abduction phenomenon. I want to ask them about Skinny Bob too. I don't know why.
Questions are fine. Just keep the questions and the weapons separate. We don't want to intimidate them. We don't want to give them a reason to be all up in arms. You got to just approach it gently, and maybe we can bring a peace offering or something. I'll bring up some churros. How about that?
Well, maybe, but I learned a few things about them doing the Zona del Silencio. There was a chapter about how to approach and correctly interact without violating this treaty 2303.
Okay,
and
so
it basically says though, do not attack them physically, don't shoot them, don't whip them.
Specifically,
they did make sure to amend it to say you cannot whip them. They didn't say you couldn't talk to them.
Right. I am hesitant. I'm apprehensive. I just don't want to spook them. I don't want to make them afraid.
As far as them getting hostile, it did also advise that if the DHs become a threat, to fire a warning shot as they are easily startled.
Okay.
And that's going to have to be on you, Agent Mora. I don't have a lot of options as far as self-defense goes. I mean, maybe I could snap the belt really hard and make it sound like a gun, but I don't know.
Keep your belt on. I have the gun. The warning shot is if things get out of hand. I think I'm a pretty good judge on the situation if I feel like it's getting too tense. But yeah,
just watch my back. Like I said, if I see these guys, I got some questions. That is all. That's all for the notes. Congratulations again, Drea, on the upgrade and these churros that are coming your way.
Hey, you'll be done with your safety seminars like before you know it.
That's right. I'll be sliding into the Zona del Churros instead from the safety. But let's get into the case. This is case 002, La Lechuza, or for the English speakers, the Owl Witch of Mexico and areas of the southwestern United States. Now, Drea, you are of Mexican descent. That's correct?
Yeah, I'm Mexican.
Look, I think this is going to be a big help to me, understanding some of the elements of this case.
I hope so.
We should begin with the origin of this phenomenon, the La Lechuza, which does translate to owl, correct? This is not a specific name like La Llorona. La Llorona.
Yeah.
It just means owl, right?
Yes. And so I'm thinking it's kind of more of a classification term, because I have heard of specific owl women, and they get their own names, like actual, their actual
So there
name.
are specific owl women, but Lechuza just translates directly to mean owl, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. True.
One of the lazier ghost names, but I think this inhabits a lot of things. What we're going to see, there are actually more than two. There are lots of different origin stories for La Lechuza we're going to discuss. And the first version of La Lechuza that I want to talk about, it states that centuries ago, witches who craved more power and fanciful abilities would make a deal with the devil, and this would grant them many abilities that some would consider unnatural. And the primary being the ability to shape into the form of a giant owl with the face of a woman.
Yeah. And I don't know why they specifically have to lose their legs. The legs, I guess, don't shrink, but it's just everything from the knee down is just gone and turns to talons. I guess they get them back. They can reassume the shape of a human. But yeah, that's pretty accurate that it's seen as darker.
I didn't think about their legs very much. And we're going to talk about many different, origins of this La Lechuza, but this is the primary one. And my question for you, Agent Mora, I want to know more about witches in general from Mexico. What kind of witchcraft is being practiced here that this woman ended up making a deal with the devil?
Well, I don't know about the very first one. There's different legend, like origin stories as to the one that kind of gets spread around. Kind of like you said, La Llorona has several different variations on it, and she kind of exists everywhere, kind of as a cautionary tale mostly, I think. But with the Lechuzas, when it comes to witchcraft, it's not all like spooky, evil, dark, black magic. that we hear, it's been demonized over time by, Christianity in general, trying to kind of get people to convert to Christianity. So there's a lot of these stories. Most of them basically I guess the message or the moral of the story that they're supposed to take away is that you'd be protected against her if your babies are baptized. She can't get your babies because she tends to go after newborns.
Well, that's what I was asking. Kind of like, is there like a specific name for like the witchcraft that was practiced, and does it predate the arrival of Christianity?
Yes, that's the fun part. Is so a lot of Latin American witchcraft and folk magic is rooted in the Amerindian Mesoamericans and the settlers there. And also, though, it's over time, it is hard to tell because there's not a lot of documentation on it at those times. But they all had their own deities that they would worship, whether it's like the Mayans or the Aztecs. And then further north in North America, there's actually a lot of kind of common threads between that. So when you had like the Afro-Caribbean folk magic kind of also brought in through the slave trade, they kind of blended and married over time, and one influenced the other. And when it comes to the current state of brujeria, is a lot of also Roman Catholic ideologies and symbolism, and obviously that comes from the missionaries.
Sure, yeah,
yeah. So when the Catholics came over and trying to convert everybody else, either they would end up scaring them into doing it or forcing them to. Obviously, the Inquisition was a huge way to kind of snuff out anybody practicing anything that they deemed unholy and that was against God. They would be put to death. So they began to, and I'm assuming this is kind of what similarly happened with hoodoo in America with the slaves there, but their African American folk magic as well, is that they ended up having to disguise their works and like hide them in plain sight by disguising them with their religious iconography that they didn't see as a threat. So that's where you see the introduction of the Catholic saints and the scriptures from the Bible and kind of making altars to it. And you actually see influences in that kind of cycle back into the church even, which, as you know, the church, the Catholic Church and Christianity ended up taking a lot from pagans in Europe. So it kind of went full circle.
Sure. It is a weird cycle that it went through. It's very interesting to think about just being there in that time before Christianity arrived and what was actually being practiced, this cross between, I don't know, hoodoo or voodoo and whatever was left over from Aztec culture, the almost the brutality of that mixed with strange like sacrifices and stuff.
Yeah.
Some of that must have been really terrifying. Like if you were like a pilgrim or a Christian or a missionary going to these places, you were like, what the hell are these,
Oh, sure.
It's definitely a culture clash for sure. And I guess whoever had guns ends up winning this,
or whoever brought the biggest diseases.
True, that too. I want to ask you, what is the proper term for a Mexican witch that we can use?
Brujo is usually, for a male practitioner, and then bruja for a female, but really they can all go by brujos.
Let's say no one's using brujo. Yeah, let's say it was bruja because
I mean, there are a number of male practitioners, but in general, it's kind of like if it's plural and it's encompassing everybody, it's brujos. But yeah, brujeria is the term for the sorcery and the quote unquote witchcraft, which again has been it's been given this kind of demonized name. It's kind of a negative spin on it. And that's because there is there's brujas blancas and brujas negras, which is then you have, white magic, black magic. There's people who do both. But the primary use for a lot of this has to do with cleansings and protection. You're communing with the spirits for a positive reason, usually. And there are those out there who do lean into the dark side, who give in to that desire for power and just extra leverage, or who just happen to be extra mean or jealous people. And that's kind of where the birth of Lechuza kind of comes from, is just somebody who's feeding on the innocent to empower themselves, or so the story goes.
Yeah, and I want to know, are deals with the devil just a common thing with the Mexican, with the brujas, the dark brujas? Does that predate Christianity? Is the idea of the devil amongst them, or is that even known?
No, that's actually an interesting question, because as far as I'm aware, the spirits were more neutral. There's like this concept of the spontaneity of spirits that you can just kind of petition the wills of. And I don't know as much about, what predated Christianity arriving there, because again, there's little written, and I'm still learning myself to this day.
I know. I don't know why I'm asking you this, as if you're going to know. I'm fantasizing about being able to time travel to see that because there's no documentation.
I know, right? I would love to know
true.
too, like the very origins, like which ancient spirits are the ones that are, because this then gets into this whole larger thing of like, from all over the world, there are so many common threads in their folk magic. Like, how many of these deities are actually the same energy, the same spirit, what have you, that people are petitioning and praying to? There's always going to be those ones that are maybe just less understood and seem dark or evil. But as far as like the devil and Satan was not really a concept before Christianity, and like put that concept out there for them and labeled them as such. Like, if you're not following our God, then you must be following Satan.
They had something, though. They had to have some kind of, especially the ones going for these. But I want to ask, we're talking about brujas, and which there are a lot of what you would be considered good witches, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What specific services is a good bruja rendering? Do they have storefronts? Are they open on Sundays?
That's a really good question. Actually, nowadays it's more popular to see that, but definitely back in the earlier times when they were still being persecuted, you were not going to see anybody advertising a sign, because there's these so healers. The specific word for healers is curanderas, and they were seen as doctors. And this is actually true also through hoodoo as well, where your root doctor, it was somebody who uses plants and as medicine, herbs and everything to treat certain physical afflictions. And what they realized through their own experiences was that physical afflictions and spiritual afflictions seem to go hand in hand, that somebody could kind of affect your physical condition through spirituality, and how to kind of keep your spirit and body both in good health through the use of the herbs. So that you have the medicinal use of the herb, and it's going to have a similar spiritual effect. If something's, a certain herb is good for promoting, your, lung health, if you have asthma, and that's probably something that they would also use for the health of, say, like your communication or ability to be calm. And
that's what New Agers are doing now. I mean, a lot of stay-at-home moms are doing this kind of stuff now, and it does almost have its roots in things like this. It definitely there's a better light shown on things like this now. Like everything you just described is something that almost an MLM would put together.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, there is.
It does.
They play to this, and so you have like these kind of shitty ones, right? Who are I consider kind of imposters. Those scam artists who are going to scare you into thinking you have a spiritual affliction because you can't see, but supposedly they can see. So you do have to keep an eye out for the disingenuous ones who are going to tell you, oh, yeah, I see a darkness on you. I see a curse has been put on you. You need to pay me $300 for this cleansing service.
Yeah, and it always starts amping up and up. And it's more of an emergency situation, like you are under attack now.
Yeah, somebody's very jealous of you. You need to be afraid. And they'll prey on fear, much like the advertising industry in America or globally currently. That kind of stuff never really goes away. It's very effective to play on someone's fears. But a good bruja
at any
will
level,
tell you
you're right. It's just different levels of the same, tactic. You know, when you see it at a lower level, it almost seems more pathetic and you want to shit on it more. But when it happens to millions of people at once, no one blinks an eye, really.
Yeah.
But we love to just look down at the ones who are doing it on that sad level.
Yeah, it's when you are taking people's money with these, when you're tricking them, when you're not being honest. But a good bruja is supposed to be, somebody who's going to identify if there is anything wrong with you. Sometimes people want a regular cleansing too. They'll do it weekly, monthly. Those are called limpias, where you get your, all of your energies kind of cleansed. It's purified. You kind of maintain that. Or protection, but you can go in for like if you've been having bad luck and you just want something to help turn your luck around and things like that. But no one's ever going to tell you, who's actually an honest practitioner, that, okay, you have a curse and only I can heal you and it's going to cost this much. Because generally a good one will be empathetic and just want to help and can at least tell you things to do that would be more cost efficient. Like, okay, if you want to try to do this on your own, get this route, do this, do that. But generally, they're your neighborhood help. They're your doctors.
I wish I had one. I really want one. The way you describe it now, I'm like, I feel like I need to be doing this once a week instead of other things.
Yeah, once a week is very that's very devout to it, I suppose.
It's therapy, I guess.
Yeah, it's good. It's healthy. Anything And then some people will, go into how much of this is just fake and placebo effect. I have always said when it comes to the difference between, folk magic, spiritualism, and the placebo effect, anything that actually helps you feel better mentally and
It
isn't
worked.
hurting you,
That's
the
what
mind
you
is
were
a very
going for.
powerful thing. Yeah. It's like, why not?
Yeah, if you're looking to feel better and something does that, well, it
Yeah.
won. All right, back to Lechuza. So we got on this whole tangent about the devil. We ended up talking about the good, but that is the original Lechuza legend that a bruja made a deal with the devil to have more powers, turned into an owl. But there is another version of the Lechuzan lore that tells of a witch who was murdered by the locals and has returned to seek vengeance in a specific region by turning into this supernatural owl person. Now, a little similar, but this is a more persecuted witch. This isn't someone who just looked out. This was someone who was murdered, and it's a vengeance angle.
They went after her. It's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast situation, right? Where the beast is kind of minding his own business for the most part. He's kind of exiled himself. I know she's not necessarily already in a state of exile.
I'm thinking Frankenstein myself, but same thing.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, just but the villagers, pitchforks are like, we don't like this. We're afraid of it. Let's kill it.
And I want to know, like, I imagine things like that. I know that's well documented in the States and in England and stuff, but is it well documented that in Mexico they were going after the witches with pitchforks and torches?
Honestly, I feel more often than not, the people would be more afraid of them and keep their distance from them and try not to anger them. So that is a little bit of a difference.
Right. So maybe it was more rare. Maybe it was rarer that someone would actually go after and murder one, and that everyone was already superstitious enough that they completely feared that this happened.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to incite that mob mentality. So it's definitely not without, it's within the realm of possibility that that's what happened in this legend. Most of the times with these stories, it tends to be like I've heard one where she's just already just a wicked person in life and decides to go and do this. So that is an interesting take where she's the victim first and then comes about.
It could be
vengeance.
both.
Yeah.
She could be a witch who was trying this, and then she was also murdered. And thinking about that, though, the persecution element, and I'm glad you bring that up, that you're right. There probably would have been a little more fear in Mexico, but because there was a little more belief.
Yeah, if she was a witch beforehand, that's the part that I've never really clear on the details of is, was she just a regular old woman beforehand, or was she already a witch beforehand? Like, so taking on this form or being gifted this form in order to take revenge on these people because they killed her. That's the thing that I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
That's where the violence part can come in. If the other one just seems like a super pissed witch who's just like, no one was going after her. She was alive, definitely, if she was doing her dark arts and somehow made this deal with the devil.
Yeah.
But I think the good witches at this point, when this was going on, if this was going on, definitely in Mexico, they probably had to learn to adapt at some point in order for those ways not to be lost. Because I want to say the bruja, the ways, you got to say that has not been lost to time. Like, a lot is known.
Oh no, yeah, and it keeps on and things that I didn't even realize that were still kind of being kept alive, like in my own family, that you just kind of think is just normal. Like you don't bat an eye at it. And it's things even like many traditions that are in very devout Catholic households, but it still has its roots mixed in with, witchcraft, supposedly. I hate the word because it just has such a negative connotation and everything. But things that people do without even realizing that they're participating in these things, like, down to birthday candles in a cake. Make a wish, blow out your candle, don't tell nobody what you wished for. That's also comes from folk magic.
What? Are you telling me I've been doing magic spells like my entire childhood? We all
I don't
have?
know if they've worked for you, but yeah, that's essentially a huge one.
Oh, no, I always get my birthday wish. I've gotten every one.
Oh, there you go, because you wish for cake.
I
wish to be another year
I
older.
wish for a cake with a little bit of wax on it. It's my one wish I ask for every year.
Yeah, wish granted. But yeah, that's the thing is these things are typically born out of fear. This is where that negativity, it's that whole Yoda quote from Star Wars is like, the fear it leads to hate, which ends up leading to, it begets more and more violence.
It's true.
It's horrible.
Yes, and we're going to get more into Lechuza and her violence too, because this is definitely the dark side of the dark arts. There is another version of the Lechuza that claims it is a spirit of a vengeful woman returning from the dead to be vengeful. And this one isn't even a witch. This version just is like, it's just a lady, and she's very mad, and she came back from the dead, and there's no witch part to it, which I think we could throw that part out.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the whole shape-shifting aspect overall. Because in your story here, she's at least changes into an owl or something, right? Or is like
same thing.
Yeah.
Basically, they all end up as a shape-shifting owl. We'll get into some of their powers, but I got to ask: would it be fair to say that Lechuza is very commonly known among people in Mexico? Do you think every town probably has its own version?
I've never actually been to a whole lot of places in Mexico, so I couldn't tell you. I do know that it's definitely in like the kind of like, okay, so like Jalisco, I know for sure because that's where my mom and my dad's family are actually both from there, and I remember hearing them talk about it. Yeah, I would think it's like probably almost as common as La Llorona.
You would maybe not. It sounds like that they have their own. I don't want to say their own story, but they have their own Lechuza. Like, this could be multiple entities with a very similar MO.
Yeah, I do. I think there's more than one for sure. I don't think there's just one only.
That's why it would make sense, commonly maybe it was a witch who asked for powers and made a deal with the devil. Or maybe it was just a witch who was murdered by people in this town. I think maybe these stories do add up to something, but they all, there's so many versions. I found one version that sounds like a PSA or like an after school special. I don't want to say story, but not that every town has their own story, but they have their own Lechuza. Like, this could be multiple entities with a very similar MO.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Basically, I have to wonder if they all kind of came around the same time, like if it had to do with the exact timeline of all the, kind of colonialization and trying to convert to these religions. And maybe, I think maybe all of these stories were probably born from the persecution because they all seem to have that kind of common thread of like some kind of feeling of being
remnant of, I keep saying superstition, but I don't mean it, that early belief that your father had, your grandfather had about, something mystical and different. And then when Christianity comes in, you're roped into that too.
Yeah.
But you've been told to hold on to that. And I guess that is technically superstition. I don't mean to demean it
that's
at
fine.
all by that.
Yeah. That's totally fair. I mean, people still to this day will have their superstitions about broken mirrors and going under ladders. Humans do have this kind of, I guess, tendency to create patterns, observe patterns that do exist, or kind of create their own conclusions from them. You see that a lot. So I don't really take it as I don't think it's insulting to say that there's superstitions regarding it. I find a lot of religions to honestly fall into the same definition.
They do. There's another version of Lechuza I want to talk about. This version sounds more like a PSA or an after-school special.
Awesome.
And this one states that Lechuza is the spirit of a woman who died in a drunk driving incident.
Oh, wow.
And that she returns to haunt bars, waiting to take revenge on people who drive drunk. This is a very specific Lechuza.
Wow. I've never heard this one.
And completely modern. Unless we're talking about drunk horse riding or carriage riding, this is a very modern Lechuza. It doesn't line up with being centuries old.
Yeah, I've never heard of this one before. I can see how somebody would kind of warp it to fit their narrative. Like we've noticed, that there seems to be usually some kind of ulterior motive behind certain urban legends, usually as like cautionary tales, old wives' tales, things like that.
Where does it start and stop? Where does this is definitely a modern telling that someone is probably telling their kids. Like, you don't want to ever drive drunk because there's this woman died drunk driving and she haunts bars. That's the worst. Haunting bars, looking for you.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, first of all, what do owls have to do with that? There's still it's missing that core aspect of it being an owl lady. But it is funny that you say bars and everything, just because like Lechuza is typically more talking about barn owls. I just thought it sounded funny when you say
bar owls.
I thought you were saying she haunts barns. I'm like, no, she haunts bars. Okay, so bar owl.
Yeah, the bar owl that no one would ever notice being there, because it's a beautiful woman and everyone's hitting on her,
and they don't notice she doesn't have any feet.
But you keep talking. Why does she have any feet? That's the one detail.
Maybe it's part of the trade.
I've seen so many different depictions of it. We're going to get into it. So we've talked a lot about, the lore and the origin of Lechuza, let's talk about some of the abilities and the characteristics of Lechuza. Now, she can, of course, shapeshift into a giant owl with a woman's face. But I've also seen other versions where the face is that of an owl and the body has more human features, like the breasts. Which
she keeps her boobs.
I've seen versions where the breasts feature prominently in some Lechuza art circles. I gotta ask, do you have a preference? Would you rather her have an owl face with boobs or a woman's face with no legs?
Well, if we're talking about what I find to be the most like artistically creepy, I would say kind of like this harpy version where it's like, it looks a little bit more like a woman and even has like the woman's long hair, but she's got the wings, possibly boobs, but still no legs, just the talons. That's the one that would scare me the most.
Well, sometimes ridiculously, she even has the witch pointed hat.
Oh yeah, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be a thing.
That's when you know the artist has gone off the rails, when they're drawing the pointed witch hat on a owl with boobs. It's like, calm
she's
down.
half European. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you've entered a different circle of Lechuza art. But another characteristic, the Lechuza is also known as a mimic. She is known to hide in trees at night outside of her residence and attempt to lure people to her by imitating the sound of a crying child. And I gotta say,
is what I'm
this
more
reminded
used
me
to.
of something, Drea, immediately from Skinwalker Ranch. Do you remember the water babies?
Yeah, I do. And that's a pretty common thing. That happens in a lot of stories. The luring of people out, either with the baby call or somebody using the voice of somebody that you know, a voice that you recognize calling your name, which that shit freaks me out.
See, yeah, I don't think I can handle that. But these water babies, they would lure people to the edge of the water with crying noises and then just drown them.
Yeah, water
I found a
spirits.
book. There's a recent book about them called Skinwalker, Cradle of the Water Babies.
Oh,
We're gonna have
wow.
to look
It
into that.
focuses on the water babies. That's rare.
It is. I think it's a Skinwalker exclamation point series, and there is a book called Cradle of the Water Babies. I have to look into that.
Oh, very cool. So I agree. Especially if there's other books that focus each on a different character.
Element,
so to speak.
sure.
Yeah, element in the Skinwalker.
Yeah.
Skinwalker.
But that is the opposite of a PSA, encouraging people to ignore babies crying.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know what I would do in that situation. Especially when you're thinking about the region.
Oh, I do. I am never investigating a
Staying the
crying
hell
child
inside.
ever. Even if it's in the same room. I am never, the crying kids,
Even if it's your kid?
done. Oh, they're not, if they're
That's
crying, they're too old for that shit. No, that's it. I can't do that anymore.
I don't blame you. I mean, the closest that I'll do is look out a window because sometimes what I think is sounding like a crying kid ends up being cats about to fight.
That's
when
you
they're
getting
standing
tricked.
off. Yeah.
See, you have to, you're going to learn a lot about Lechuza lore. I know you probably already know this, but to whoever is associated with this, you have to figure this out. Another form of mimicry, they don't just cry like babies. The Lechuza is also known for whistling. She will sit in a tree outside of the target and whistle until someone comes out.
Yeah, that's the spooky stuff. That's what I'm used to, is her kind of hanging out, kind of sizing it up, figuring out if there is a weak enough target to go after, which is why she tends to go after more the younger people. And again, if there's any merit to it, going after the unbaptized, it's not necessarily that. It's that they were advertising that as maybe the only defense that a newborn could have against Lechuza.
Guess you're right. You got to plan that baptism really quick.
Right
if
away.
you're in any kind of Lechuza territory.
Oh, I do have a story related to that if you want to hear one later.
No, go for it. I would love to. You brought up a story. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so this one it goes more along those lines of it being just kind of an evil lady, just a dark witch who just does this shit because she enjoys the power. There was this woodcutter who happened upon her house while he was coming back from work one day, and he had his dog with him, but he was like super thirsty, so he stopped and asked the lady if he can have some water. And she was attractive and everything, and everybody kind of realized that she was, although she kept to herself, she had a certain like charm to her that people were drawn to her. And the dog starts freaking out when she brings him the water, and the woodcutter doesn't know why. He's like, oh, this person seems perfectly nice. Kind of smacks the dog, apologizes, and is on his way. His wife ends up giving birth that weekend to his child, And he's very, very happy for that and is glad that he knows about the stories and everything and just knows he wants to get him baptized as soon as possible, goes to the church. And apparently the priest is gone for the weekend for some reason. This is a question mark, like why is the priest gone on vacation? But he's not there to perform it. That very night, despite their praying, she does come by and tries to attack. He hears that whistling and he recognizes that that's the whistle of the Lechuza coming around. He goes out there and with like a slingshot and a heavy rock or something, obviously, he goes and he swings it at her and it hits her right in the eye, like in one of the eyes. And she fucks off. That was enough to kind of send her away. Now, later on, when he goes back to work, as he has to, and he passes by that lady's house again, he was going to tell her about it. And he's like, you wouldn't believe what just happened. And he notices this lady is kind of blinded in one eye. She's got one eye kind of swollen shut and everything. And he puts two and two together and realizes and even calls her out. He's like, you're La Lechuza. And she said, like, yeah, you got me last night, but I'm not going to be so merciful tonight. Like, I'm coming for you. And he ends up then just being like, the fuck you are. And he chops her head off right then and there.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it ends like that.
Yeah. So there's those kind of common themes about the whistling, how they always mention the dogs barking. If you hear the whistling and dogs are going crazy, that's when you should be on really high alert. And
dogs
I guess
are great
get
for all
baptized.
this.
Yeah, they are.
I feel like every paranormal story where the guy has the dog, he's like the first thing. Well, the dog. We just talked about UFOs, Alien Highway recently, where the dogs just go nuts. It's like, of course, always have dogs around.
Oh yeah, the alien in the freezer. Unfortunately,
oh,
that dog encounter.
Susie, of course,
or Susie.
This idea of mimicking to entice people to their death. This is a very old concept. We talked about, you mentioned them earlier, those sirens. The sirens of ancient Greece, those were half bird, half female creatures that would lure ships with their enchanting singing voice and then kill them. I mean, that checks a lot of Lechuza boxes. You got half bird, half woman, very into luring men. They're killers. Maybe this form of evil, like Lechuza, this is like a very old practice. The devil, I guess, likes to turn chicks into bird ladies and have them kill men they don't like. It is very scary. They make me nervous. Do Lechuzas make you nervous?
Yeah, honestly, yes. I love owls. If I see them out in the wild, I won't be afraid of one necessarily, but I do feel that sense of awe when you see one. Obviously, you see a great horned owl. They're just awesome looking. All birds of prey are. But there's something particularly spooky about great horned owls and barn owls. They look a little bit less like a bird and more like, a killer,
Yeah, it looks like something that should not be in your presence.
But if I hear that whistling, I'm out.
Whistling? If you hear whistling, you're out of there. Babies, I'm ignoring that too.
Yeah.
Babies and whistling so far. I'm keeping myself in check. The dogs are barking. The dogs are barking all the time. That's the problem.
Yeah, as opposed to when animals go completely silent, and you know that that's something kind of probably even darker than one of these creatures that we're talking about. That's usually pure evil, But dogs freaking out, animals freaking out in general, I always pay attention to if they're acting out of their normal behavior. Because if your dog freaks out over everything, obviously you're not going to pay attention to it.
It's an extra little Lechuza defense. Have a dog.
Yeah, there you go.
It's said that hearing the cry of the Lechuza is an omen that someone in your family will die very soon. And this is part of the lore of the Lechuza. If you hear the baby crying or the whistle, either that baby, he's coming for that one-day-old baby from that story, or just someone in your family could die.
Most likely at the hands of the Lechuza, right?
Well, maybe not, because this is also a characteristic of another famous female monster legend, the Banshee of my people, the Irish.
This is the Irish Lechuza.
It is. But banshees are not half bird. They are all woman all the time. And they do not judge you for your drinking or your drinking and driving. Never. A banshee
and they're not coming for
that.
your infants either. They're just messengers, right? Scary, scary messengers.
They're just letting you know your family is fucked for a little bit. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I heard one time, and I'm not claiming it to be anything like that, but it sure as hell ran across my mind. I heard this really strange animal sound, and this is when I was living in a very, a more urban area that you're not going to have these wild animals making weird sounds. Because if you heard a fox out in the wild when they have like their mating calls, that shit sounds creepy as hell. But you're not going to hear that in the city. And I don't know what the hell it was, but I looked outside. It sounded like it came from like right outside my window, but on the street. I was like a story up. I don't think that was what it was, but it definitely gave me pause. I had to think about these things.
It was a halfway converted Lechuza making some weird owl woman noise.
Definitely closer to Mexico than Ireland, yeah.
That's probably right. But another thing, man, Lechuza has so much stats. You could go down them all. But Lechuza is also very strong. They're able to swoop down and pick up grown adults and carry them off. And then she will use her owl claws to tear them apart. So that is the big fear. If a Lechuza does get you, she can pick you up. She can fly wherever the hell she wants with you and kill you.
It's huge. Yeah. And that is an interesting thing, too, how some of these different stories, like you said, describe them as looking a little bit more like an owl, some a little bit more like a person and the size of one. I have to wonder if that has anything to do with maybe how powerful or how much that particular witch knows how to do. Like if she can completely disguise herself as a full-on owl, I find that to be just as dangerous. Like maybe she can't pick you up at that size, but she can like be sneakier.
They seem to know a lot about it too. Where I've seen a lot of just like reports about this mention that it's not a power that you can use for very long. It's a limited power,
like Animorphs.
Yeah, Lechuza has to get her business done, like almost like a werewolf. He's only there for a couple hours. Yeah. You only got a little, but it seems like her power is a little more limited, where she can do the full-on owl flying around for a little bit. She can maybe be that half woman, no-legged, boobed.
Oh, she starts turning more human.
She can do that for a little bit. You build your strength up, but you can only do this for a little bit. You can get maybe one guy a night. I guess the odds of Lechuza getting you aren't great.
No, you just kind of always have to be on your guard. I mean, I've heard of different ways that she can infiltrate and get into your house and everything too, that she'll just like, even doesn't even need to get near you to kill you. She could just kind of kill you in your sleep by just kind of sucking your soul out or something.
So many powers she has. Another ability of a Lechuza, and this is probably the most powerful, is the ability to summon storms.
Oh.
There have been many Lechuza sightings that coincide with terrible thunderstorms. And this is attributed to Lechuza. That almost seems overpowered. There's a lot of damage could be done with a power like this, that if you were actually controlling storms.
That's a huge power. I mean, that's her entire repertoire is controlling storms. But what if it's just coincidence? What if it's one of those things where you happen to see her because she senses a thunderstorm is coming and she's trying to find somewhere else to be?
Some people speculate that maybe she's using the storms to fly easier through, which doesn't make sense, but also, I don't know.
That would hurt her as well, to get electrocuted,
It would. But I don't think that would happen, because if that wasn't enough, Lechuza is a very difficult entity to kill because she is immune to bullets and other weapons, even though you were talking about rocks earlier.
Yeah. You can totally smack her in the face with a rock. You can't.
No. She is totally immune to bullets. And some have even speculated that Lechuza is an immortal being, and that might explain the longevity of these types of accounts. The fact that there are different Lechuzas over centuries in different cultures, in different forms, but reported even when people weren't looking for attention or to make podcasts or whatever people do, write books, whatever they do with these stories.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens with a lot of legends. You're going to hear all these variations. I've definitely not heard about the thunderstorm thing. I've never heard about her being impervious to bullets either. So this is new to me.
These are true traits. Yes, you don't try to. I know you
can't kill one. You know what? Maybe the story about her getting killed was probably bullshit.
We actually are here in Mexico, and you have a gun, which is probably pretty useless at this point. So.
Yeah, great. And you don't even have your whip, but we can't whip her. She seems just completely invincible to any kind of harm. Like, I don't know. I mean, holy water has got to be something. If you can baptize a baby and the baby's safe.
We'll have to find the church out here, I guess. I don't know. Speaking of churches, though, there are various Bible passages referring to owls as something dark and to be rejected by God.
Wow.
And owls do have a very dark history, even in the Bible. Even in China, the owl is an omen of disaster. In ancient Egypt, they're a symbol of death. They are the night and cold. And in Argentina, they have Cachiru, the malignant mythical owl that steals the soul of men at death and turns them into ghosts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So owls have always had a very negative connotation throughout, spiritualism and any kind of deep, almost religious belief, it seems. Why are people so down on owls? I think owls do a good service. I like owls.
They're awesome. I think they're beautiful. I could, again, just see why people would be afraid of them and make these connections. It's interesting that you brought up like what they kind of stand for in other cultures and everything. There was, I think it's in the Mayan calendar. Yeah, there's a Mayan horoscope. One of the archetypes, I suppose, in this is an owl woman, and that goes from like October to November. That represents intelligence, sensitivity, and fidelity. So there's some positive attributes there for the owl. I think, and in American culture, we always kind of see them as very like wise. Like
we do.
Really, we respect the owls a lot.
Well, we want to know how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Yeah, this guy can't tell you that, but he'll try.
Well, I mean, he's the only guy who would know. You're right.
Just 2.
And I know you sounded a little nervous and it sounded like you can't kill them at all, even with the rocks from that story. And
yeah.
Look, they may be impossible or very hard to kill or destroy, but they can be stopped. Like those humanoids earlier, you may not be able to shoot them, but you can scare them off.
Oh, yeah.
One known tactic for combating the Lechuza is to curse at it. Because if you curse loudly at the Lechuza, it'll get its feelings hurt and it would leave.
Oh, this is great. Okay, cool. I've got that in my back pocket.
But you have to note this, though, that you have to do this first. You cannot engage with the Lechuza. You cannot hear the whistling and get suckered in and drawn in or whatever, and then start cursing. You have to start immediately. Like, I don't know. There's some weird loophole about it that,
my goodness. I can only imagine.
She can almost hypnotize you at some point.
Oh,
I have
see.
a question.
Yeah.
Look, I'm fine with cursing at birds, and I'm already now ignoring babies. I may as well be an asshole as these guys too, but I got to ask you, do you think the Lechuza knows English?
I think that there's enough words. It might be in the inflection and the energy if she doesn't know English. Maybe she could be picking up on English, though. We're a very multicultural, like global society now.
I know, but I don't know a lot of curses in Spanish. Could you tell me at least a couple good ones I could probably use?
Well, I mean, depending on how vulgar you want to get. I mean, call her a puta, chinga tu madre. You can tell her chupon verga. I don't know. That's pretty much the extent that I would go to if I didn't know exactly what it was. Here's my concern is immediately cursing as soon as I hear somebody whistling and it's just somebody whistling. Yeah, or just cussing at a baby. I don't mind cussing at a baby. But I don't want to just be cursing at some stranger who's just minding their business whistling.
This might not be the only option. Cursing isn't the only option when it comes to Lechuza defense. Salt can also be used. Salt is, of course, a very common defense in the dark arts, right?
Yeah,
Agent
that one's
Mora.
like pretty universal, yeah.
And it is supposed to be a very, very big part of Lechuza defense. You basically have 2 things you can do. You can use salt, or you can curse at the thing, you can say some of the things that Agent Mora said. Thinking about all this owl lore, though, like you're finding so many things with different owls. Do you remember the movie Labyrinth?
Yeah, I do.
In that film, the Goblin King character, played by David Bowie, he transformed into an owl, a lot like a Lechuza. Bowie is technically a Lechuza.
Yeah, that didn't stick in my memory so well. It has been several years since I've seen that movie, but yeah, that's a huge connection. I'm surprised it didn't turn into bats or a crow or something. Those are other big ones, that are associated
bats
with
and
dark.
crows. But owls are definitely out there. I know there are other examples. I'm sure the Animorphs book series has an owl girl at some point.
I'm sure somebody did morph into an owl. Hey, owls are the ones who let Harry know that he was accepted into Hogwarts, to learn about the arts,
Oh, you're right.
Not just the dark arts, but, the good ones too.
And you're right. An owl is definitely a familiar for a lot of witches.
They do seem to have that supernatural connection.
Definitely in the top 3 of familiars, right? We go in cat, you go in owl, and what?
Crow.
Crow. Okay, crow.
Yeah, I'd say crow.
Dog is not nowhere near the list.
Dogs, no, they wag their tails, they knock shit over. Like,
it's too much work. You're a wizard. You got to learn stuff. You can't be worried about a dog. It's too much work.
Yeah.
But I have a little more supernatural or superstitious defense that you can do against lechuzas. It says that I found that tying a rope of 7 knots and hanging it on your door will also protect you, since it is a sign of acknowledgement and respect towards the lechuza.
Yeah, something about, I didn't know that you could use it as a sign of respect. But yeah, there's definitely something to the red cord in a lot of protective rituals.
7 knots in a red cord is it? I don't know a lot about this. Is that a good protection?
Things can often vary too between like regionally. And then a lot of times, that's the funny thing about brujeria versus like other more, I guess, structural, institutionalized forms of folk magic, where a lot of times it's kind of up to the preference of the individual practitioner. Some people will say, no, absolutely, it has to be done this way, this way, this way. But then there are so many different regional, spells and rituals that seem to work fine for the people who have used them. I think what it all really, really comes down to is your own conviction and your own strength of mind and your own confidence in yourself, and not giving any kind of foothold for evil to get in, because when it comes to most negative entities, when it comes like ghost stories, demonic possessions, like all over, someone who's really strong-willed is less of a target. It just seems to be very common. But definitely do 7 knots and a red cord and like that. See if that works for you if you ever hear that whistling.
Yeah, and there is something for the more religious types to use to protect against lechuza. Some say praying can also save you. Specifically, the Magnificat, a prayer from the Gospel of St. Luke, but it must be recited in Spanish and then also backwards.
Oh my goodness.
You would have to very much practice doing this prayer.
Yeah, that's insane. Like, that's insane.
The Magnificat. And you got to know it one in Spanish and then backwards. It's like you can't. A lot of us can't even get the alphabet frontwards and backwards if
like
we wanted
the
to.
words backwards, or like literally reading it backwards, so that if you recorded it and played it, it would play forward.
I can tie knots. I can curse.
Do the knots and the cursing.
I can knots. I can do knots. I can do cursing.
I'll give you a few more just off the top of my head. You can burn some Palo Santo it's better than burning the white sage. You can. A basil is a holy plant. Like I said, I think the holy water, the crucifix thing, and whatever system that you believe in, it's that conviction. But yeah, the salt for sure.
Right, whatever you're brought into. Yeah, salt is definitely a big one. Of course, the supernatural references you would think of. It seems like such a trope, but they got it from somewhere. It actually is.
That one's very real.
It is, and I thought it would help. I know you got to bring a story about a very specific La Lechuza sighting. I have one as well. I'm going to talk about a La Lechuza sighting in Nuevo Laredo in the 1950s. There was a Lechuza terrorizing the town, and the locals came up with a plan to kill it. It was lured out of the trees by using a child as bait.
Oh, my God.
You already know. Lechuzas love their kids. They need these. When the Lechuza attempted to take the kid, locals fired at it with guns, but only hit its claws before it flew away. The next day, they went to the house of the bruja they believed to be a Lechuza, and she answered the door with a bandaged leg.
Uh-huh.
It's that same story.
Yeah, that's a common thread. I think that they're not impervious to weapons.
I'm starting to think that too, that we have and that poor kid, bait boy, they use their kid.
Maybe that kid probably sucked. It's probably like, oh, this is a neighborhood terror. We should use him as bait. Maybe he'll behave better after this.
Yeah, how young was he? Lechuzas are like, well, we never got around to baptizing our last kid, and he's 10 now. He'd probably get away.
Yeah, just give him a couple of rocks to chuck at her,
Yeah.
You're not defenseless at that age.
Yeah, there's so many stories, but there are also a lot of modern accounts of La Lechuzas, and these stories involve her swooping down on cars to try to get them to run off the road.
Oh, ew.
And this is like, as much as the old theme of, well, yeah, we shot her with a rock and then we found her the next day. The more modern version is someone was driving and an owl swooped down on her car, and that's the La Lechuza. She is trying
Oh, my God.
Almost swooping in as far as the drunk driving thing. Do you have an owl swooping down in your car story?
Yeah, I completely forgot until you mentioned it right now. Luckily, I wasn't alone. I wasn't the one driving. It was me and 2 friends. It was incredibly foggy. This is in my hometown. We're in the hills. So there's a section where the fog gets really thick. And I mean, we had like, I don't know, 10 feet of visibility, maybe. It was really bad. So we're kind of driving slower than usual. And this huge white owl swooped down in front of the windshield, like we almost made impact with it, but it scared the shit out of us. It was
trying
intense.
to run you off the road. You guys were targets.
Yeah, I mean, they were very dark hills, not very well lit and super foggy. Like, it sounds like a spooky night, Good God, forgot about that.
Well,
we survived.
It's brought you right back. You did survive. And there is so much to this Lechuza, but where does the truth lie in all of this lore? And it's a lot to take in. It's a lot of ancient lore and modern lore and even Drea lore, a hurricane swooped on by owls. But I got to ask you, how would someone avoid being a target of La Lechuza? Now, I know we've talked about different methods, but what would you personally suggest?
I would personally suggest always carrying around some kind of amulet, some kind of form of protection. Usually things of silver tend to be seen as more pure. There's so many forms of protection, like whether it's jewelry or a coin or something that's either anointed with oil or blessed by holy water, blessed by your own personal priest, somebody that you trust. That's normally what I would personally do. If you really want to get into it, like if you know that you're going into an area or that's purported to have these things around and you want to amp it up, I would say put something even like in your shoe, put it in like your left shoe, whether it's like a prayer or something. But again, just make sure you just look up on the protection of whatever religion or whatever you practice, whatever makes you feel good.
Yes, do this. And the jewelry aspect, guys, jewelry looks pretty cool. A lot of guys are a little adverse to putting a necklace on or a bracelet. It looks pretty cool, man. Just go with it. And I got to ask, do you think La Lechuza is a threat to the common man or woman?
No, she seems to be a little bit more in rural areas. So I wouldn't say that you'd have to worry about it if you live in a very well-populated area. I don't think she can really get by on victims because she probably they like to stay hidden, a little bit. That's kind of why they disguise themselves in the first place. They're not trying to be out in the open. Sure. They're not trying to get rocks hurled at them. No, so just be careful when you're out in the country.
Wait, hold on. I think I see something. Right, listen. Get back here.
Oh, jeez. I don't see it.
Listen, it's those humanoids. Watch. Look, I'm going out there. I want to talk to these guys. If this goes south, you know what to do.
All right. Well, walk at them sideways. Don't charge at them. Like you should. Honestly, you should stay here.
Entering the zone.
Hello there, Agent Ryan, ZDS. Look, I got some questions for you. Hold on. I got this, Drea.
Okay.
Don't. Drea.
Okay. I don't. No. Look, he looks angry.
Wait.
No.
Come back here, you goddamn poonters or whatever.
Nope. I don't trust it. Like you go out there, you don't even have a weapon. We're not supposed to antagonize.
I didn't feel
off. Good. I didn't feel good about it. I had to.
I don't feel good anymore either. We should probably head back. But before we are out of here, Drea, after all the research, what, in your opinion, is the Lechuza?
And they're gone, right? Like, okay. I really think that I'm so shook up. I think that it's a witch. I think that it is a witch who has communed enough with whatever dark entities that she's going for. I do not believe that they are good. I do believe that they are dark-spirited and have ill intentions. But yeah, I straight up think that they're witches.
I do too. I believe that this is a very ancient evil. It's found in many cultures, and I want to look into acquiring someone, preferably a witch, maybe would be willing to make a deal with the devil in a controlled environment, and we could maybe document this transformation and their abilities, and this could definitely further the big picture research and application that ZDS looks to accomplish. I think this is a reachable goal. I think we can find a suitable subject who would make this deal with the devil.
But partner with us too and let us observe?
Of course, another giant leap in discovery. Imagine the possibilities and then attain them. This is great. All right, let's get out of here because they're going to be back in greater numbers. Good work as always, Agent Mora, and I think I am getting the signal. All right. Until next time.
Inti putas.
Zona del Silencio is underwritten by ZDS Inc., ZDS R&D, and the Zona del Silencio Media Outreach Department. If you have a case that requires research, we can be contacted through Zona del Silencio Podcast at gmail.com, at Zona del Podcast on Twitter, and Zona del Silencio on Instagram. ZDS. Research, observe, disseminate.